And welcome back to Flexible Games, where we are going to do another vintage engineering update. It has been a while since I've done one of these, and a lot of progress has been made. The 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 project is coming up to about a year. I can't remember exactly when I did the first stream, but we're coming up on a year, and like I said way back then, it is going to take me at least a year, and I was not wrong. It has taken a while. The areas that I don't had or I didn't have any experience in did prove to be very hard to get through. I rewrote the code many times. We'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to give everybody an update on the progress so far. And last time I did an update, I had the test generator, test machine. I've done basically updates on the GUI system. I figured that out. I figured how to do all of that. And so, yeah, I did all of these. And since then, we've done a lot of work. See all the things struck out here. So we are well with the energy framework is done. The block objects are done. The electrical network system is done. Relays, that's done. Update ticks is done. Yeah, test generator wired to test machine is done. Like, it is crazy. The multi-block stuff, I'm delaying that. Anything really related to looking pretty and fancy, right? Anything related to the visual side of things, I'm delaying until after, like, the bulk of the raw material is done, right? Like, all of the work in getting the machines running and simulating and crafting. Once all of that is basically done, multi-blocks is just sort of, it's icing on the cake at this point. It's like, oh, this would look pretty if, right? So I'm delaying that until after the bulk of the work is done, and that way somebody can basically, if they have early access to the mod, they would be able to even contribute if they wanted. If they're artists and they're not programmers, by then the machines are in, and they know, hey, you know, there's an extruder machine or there's a XYZ machine. I can model that, right? I am not good at that. I can kind of hack my way through and do a decent job, but there are people that are way better at that stuff. And so once all the machines are in, then they know, like, what might we need, what would be a cool idea for this. And so that will be an ongoing process. As more and more machines are done, people can work on that, because I know it takes some time. So in here, I've also got recipe loaders in the game. I thought this was going to take me a while to do, but it only took me like 2 days. I got my own recipe registry system, my own recipe loader, my own recipe base class, and my own foundation for building recipes. There's already one in there for metal presses. Excuse me. And yeah, that system is now ready to go. A little bit of testing left to do, but yeah, you can add a tweak. And because the recipe system is basically mirrors the base game, you can edit it with patches, JSON patches, and other mods. And so once everything is done, once all the machines are in, once all the recipes are in, once everything is ready to go, and I get all of the balance, and I release the mod, and the mod is available for everybody. Somebody could take that, do a massive patch to all of the machines, all of the recipes, and basically make a Greg Tech, like, very hard, much more in-depth version of that, using all of the same materials, right? That's what I'm going after. And so everything is going to be basically using the base game materials, the base game systems, and you'll be able to patch right into that without a problem, because it's all going to be base game, like JSON looking stuff. Okay, so moving on, what's next? Now that we have recipes and basically all the things ready to go, now it's going to be all of the machine types, right? And I want to try to cover as many little options as possible. But the next big challenge is going to be like fluids, like trying to figure out how fluids operate. Right now, fluids they're basically just stack sizes, just like everything else, right? If you have a bucket of a fluid, there's an X amount of fluid in that bucket, or a little bowl. If you have a little bowl, there's an X amount of fluid in that bowl. So fluids are kind of bizarre the way that they're done. But it's going to be trying to figure out how to do routing and stuff. And I'm going to be modeling an item and fluid routing system off of the pipes mod from Minecraft. And the reason I'm going to do that is performance. I would love nothing better to do like something akin to conveyor belts, like the Create mod. I would love to do that. However, if you have experience with the Create mod or have watched videos of big factories using the Create mod, you know that frame rate performance, as well as server or game tick rates, suffer considerably because of massive amounts of conveyor belts. So as much as I would love to have conveyor belts in the game, or conveyor belts in the mod, I don't think, as far as the big picture performance goes, I don't think it's a good idea. I think people would immediately start to see and suffer performance hits, because simulating conveyor belts en masse in a big factory is just too much in a voxel game. It's too much in a 3D world. Pipes, the way that Pipes does things, the reason why it is so FPS and UPS friendly is it's not simulating the movement through the pipe one block at a time, right? You have an input, you have an output, and all it does is basically instantly teleport things around, and it doesn't simulate the thing moving through. Now, you could possibly simulate that by just adding a travel time delay. Item goes in, the mod automatically knows where it's going, right? There are filters or whatever infrastructure you put on there, and it could backtrace and say, well, that's 15 blocks to from start A to B is 15 total blocks. That's travel time is going to be XYZ, and you just delay that. That's one way to do it, but that alone adds weight to the update, because now you've got to update in a tick rate. You've got to update that little thing has to update, and that travel time has to kick off, right? There has to be a trigger for that. So even that sort of bridge solution, medium solution, is probably not going to work too well. It's going to be difficult. But modeling it off of the pipe system will give you the most, like, it'll just give you the best course of like building a big factory and not worrying about it crushing your update rate for your game. So that's, that or Laser.io. I am a big fan of Laser.io, but there's a lot to that mod. That would be hard to unpack. That would be many, many months of work just to implement a lot of those features. And it doesn't really fit. Laser.io doesn't really fit the style of Vintage Story, right? You wanted a more nitty-gritty thing like the shoot system. But yeah, other people have been working on like water pipes and stuff like that. And I would love if they, if I could reach out and say, hey, let's collaborate. Let's build something bigger and better together than separate. But anyway, and then, once all the machines are basically done, once everything is ready, then it's going to be moving on to how to get multi-blocks to work. There are a lot of examples out there of people that have worked on this problem. And there's a new feature in the game that might let me place, once you place something in the world, like the master block, to ghost blocks around it as what blocks to place for the multi-block. And, there's a lot of testing and stuff. There's going to be a lot of code. It's going to be several months of work, probably, just tweaking around and playing with it to get it to work. But I'm still fairly confident. I'm about 85% confident that the multi-block system will work. It's just going to take a lot of code, and I'm going to need a bunch of multi-block, like large machines to make it look cool. So if you're interested in that, reach out either on here or on my Discord server, or on the Vintage Story server. I am Buggy on there. Look for my black and white FG logo on my name. That is me. Now let's get into how this system works, and I could go way in depth on this, but I'm gonna skip the stone over the top of the lake right now, and I'm just gonna kind of give you a rundown of how this is built and what pieces that I want to integrate into the base game, because I am going to be submitting a chunk of this mod or a chunk of this code to Tyrone in order to get it into the base game for everybody to use. Okay, so the last 8 months or so has been working on the wiring system here. So over here, let me hide my face. Over here, you have the catenary system, and the catenary system is the wiring system. It's a generic implementation of a wiring system. I had to unpack. I used the signals mod as a sort of template on how the author of that mod, how he implemented the wiring, because it's very, very specific. The wiring system there is very specific to his mod. It cannot be used in any other way. And so I had to spend a huge amount of time unpacking all of that mod and figuring out how he implemented everything and putting it all back together, sort of like taking an engine out of a car, tearing it down to its base pieces, its nuts and bolts, and then putting it back together in a and adding like turbo or something. Like, I don't know, I kind of lost the metaphor there, but like I had to take apart that mod and be like, all right, how did this thing go together? And then piece it back together while at the same time changing enough to make it generic. So now the mod is basically its own entity. It does not rely on anything outside of itself. So the catenary mod, all that it does is manage and render and track the wires in the world, right? The wires in the world represent it's a physical manifestation of all of those connections. And that's all it is it tracks the wires themselves. The networks that are built from that are built because what I implemented is in the catenary mod itself is a couple events that can fire, and one event is on wire connected and then on wire removed. So on wire connected is fired when a wire connection is made, and wire removed is an event that fires when a wire is broken. Okay, and it is fired for every wire that's broken. If a relay holds, let's say, 5 connections, the event would be fired 5 times if that block is broken, if the relay is broken. So it fires, it removes the first connection and then fires the event, and then it removes the second connection and fires the event, and the third, and so on until it is done. Okay, so it's a very simple system. All it does is fire the event. It doesn't even care what happens at the other side of the event. All it does is fire the event, and it tracks in a central location the data. All of the wires is saved in itself. So and I had prototyped early a system that was much more complex, where it saved each connection in a block behavior, and then tracking that behavior and doing, and it was insanely complex and incredibly prone to bugs. And so I stripped all of that out of the Catenary mod, and I opted for a central storage of all of the wires in the world. And each wire connection, when it's saved to the save game, each wire connection is 74 bytes. That's how big a wire connection is, because I save certain values with that. I could probably scrape that down into something smaller, but 74 bytes. So think about it, like if you had 1,000 wire connections in your game, that's only 74K. 74K in the grand scheme of things, in a huge world, the chunks in the world, the data in the world would be many gigabytes, and 74K is nothing in that realm. Plus the game has a bucket of storage space available for mods and other data that is a gigabyte. So I have a gigabyte to work with, or it's less than a gigabyte, but so it fires the event, and then anything that wants notification where a wire is connected or disconnected needs to subscribe to those events. And long-time programmers know how events work. Very, very easy to do. Just like adding yourself to the mouse clicked event or the onslaught modified event. Events are just basically generic functions that get called in order, in a sequence, when something happens. And this is no different. So the second tier, so the first tier was that Catenary mod. First tier was that. The next tier is the electrical network. The electrical network runs basically off of a single main interface, which is the I electrical block entity. And this relies on the Catenary mod because it uses wire nodes, right? So this, I might tweak this a little bit, because the electrical block entity is, I want it to be a little bit more generic. So basing this off of wire nodes, I'm pondering whether to change this a little bit. But this is the basis for, I used very roughly the idea from Minecraft Forge. I kind of dug into that API to figure out how Minecraft Forge does the Forge energy. And it comes down to one interface. That's it. One interface is the entirety of how Minecraft Forge gets the Forge energy and RF and all the electrical systems in Minecraft all talking to one another is one interface. And I wanted to replicate that a little bit. So this is what it is. It is the system for connecting and disconnecting, or it's the interface for power systems, basically. So I might move the connection stuff into a separate interface. That would be my decision. And then all of the power related things um, would be in this interface, right? Because all of this can extract, type, can receive, extract, powerful, sleeping, enabled, priority. I have a built-in priority system. Receive power, extract power, and cheat power. These are the main two things that any electrical system would implement. And this is how Forge does it. I modeled this very, very close off of Forge with my own. There's obviously some tweaks and updates to it, but yeah. And I can go into detail about how that works and everything. But yeah, I think what I'll probably end up doing is separating out the connection stuff into a separate interface, because that is what I interface with my electrical network mod. So the electrical network subscribes to those. Where is it? Electric Network Manager. Right here. So the Electrical Network Manager subscribes to those events from the Catenary mod and runs my own version of those events with all of the data that I have. And it, the event itself passes in certain values that you can use to figure out whether or not the connection is important to you. First, you have to determine what type it is. Then you have to determine what the entities are. And then you have to determine a whole lot of other things. And once you know that the connection is valid and that you can use it, you can then remove, add nodes, rebuild your networks, like do whatever you want on the network side of things that's completely independent from the Catenary wiring mod. So all of that is good. You can do whatever you want on that side. So yeah, anyway, for all of this, it builds a system, and I've tested it to a certain point at right now. I've tested it, but I've also moved on to let's show you kind of in the final format here. I'm in developer mode for my game, so I get, you can see 19 VE metal press recipes loaded. There's my recipes loading for the metal press. Okay, so metal press, right? It's sort of, my test machine started life out as a hard coat. It was hard coated ingot to plate, right? Super hard coated. Now it actually is using the recipes. So here we have power, right? Coming from this. You can see there's 74 seconds of burn time left. And if I open this, let's move this mold over to here. You can see the mold has durability. I built in, there's a durability check on the molds. And the molds will be like smithable. You can also take the mold out. Let's close that and put it on here. You can even ground store it like that. So I'm trying my best to make this good. Okay, so the mold, and let's open the generator again. Oh, there it is. It was open. Okay, so you'll see when I put an ingredient in here, this will start ticking down because this is distributing power to this right here. So let's put a copper ingot in there. You can see this is actually building. This is, it takes a second for it to kick on, but you can see it ticked down, and it made a plate, and it had some copper bits left over. That's part of the recipe, right? Part of the recipe is you can add a secondary and randomized value. So let's take those out and see how many we get a second time. We got 5 the first time. It's a variable output, and there's a little bug with this bar here. Now we got 3, right? So there is a variable output right there that you can use, and whatever. There's I'm building as much flexibility into the system as possible. But obviously, it's a, you know, my block style here is not ideal. And as you can also see, is this block is facing a different way. So it'll, depending on northeast southwest, it will face different directions. But how do you wire this up, right? Here's my wire. This is the catenary mod. The wire itself, right? This wire itself is the catenary mod, as are the relays. The relays are part of the catenary mod. And all of this is supplemental, and you can augment it with JSON. You can add wire types, you can add relay types, and all you need to do is specify, you know, supplement the JSON, you know, with your own type. You know, add a type. You can add shapes by type, and then you can do object by type if you really want, like class by type if you really wanted to do that. But the little nubs here are selectable when you're holding a specific thing in your hand. Either you're holding wire, right? So if we do H and we do relay, come on game. Relay. So you can see LV, MV, HV, EV. There's one for all power, red and green signals, and communication. And if we look at wire, you can see wire, LV, MV, HV, EV, all red, green, and communication. So you can see all of the wire types that are built in, and then the relay types that are built in, and there's a wire tool. And so the wire tool, you can snip the wires, right? There's really no way of that I've been able to find to detect. Yeah, see, object not set to it. There's no way to detect the wire, right? And that is, that's an interesting bug with the wire tool. I knew I was not going to get through this video. I knew I was not going to get through this video without at least one crash, because I said it's all working. I didn't say it was bug free. So yeah, the wire cutters still, you know, stuff is barely working. Anyway, why did my screen go black? That's weird. OBS is being weird. Okay, so it does work. However, if you're looking at an actual wire node that you can connect to, you can see the bounding box is around that node in order to connect the wire. So I can actually shift right click this and it'll snip that wire and it'll separate these out into different networks, right? So then I can take the wire and say, I want to connect. Now you can check, right? This is ID 33. I have some debug stuff at the top just to help debug the electrical networks. So you can see one connection is at ID 33. This one is ID 34, and this one is ID 30. And if we connect this to this, you can see the wire connection and the wires. The wires have a max length, so as soon as you go out, it disappears. Let's connect that. So now these two networks, 33 and 34, are going to connect. Now this is on 34, right? This is on 34 because this connected here, and the where I take the number from is where you start the connection. So I started here. I started on this node and connected this way. So this node is 34. That's where this inherited. It's kind of trivial what gets taken. It really is. So anyway, and if I take this one, which is ID 30, and stretch it over to there, boink. Now this is 30, this is 30, this is 30, this is 30, and this is 30, right? So I merged this network with this one, and it inherited this network ID because I stretched it from here to there. If I stretched it from here to here, it would have taken 34, which was the network that was over here. So it really is trivial. But the relays, when they're stretched and connected like that, again, that fired an event, and the building of those networks was separated from the wire mod, right? It had nothing to do with the wire. It was strictly my electrical network system picking up those events, processing those events, and merging or splitting the networks accordingly. So it's up to a network system to do whatever it wants with the information that those events fire and give it. The actual wires themselves are just 3D objects in the world that get rendered. That's all. And the meshes that get generated are not saved with the world. They are regenerated when you like exit the game and come back into the world. They regenerate once and then they get reused over and over and over again, the same mesh, because they're not moving, they're not changing. It's just, it is the same mesh. And then the different wire types, the different wire types have, I need to tweak the I need to tweak how big those are, because they're kind of hard to see. I understand they're kind of hard to see. I need to tweak those. The different wire types have different stats, and that's all done in JSON. So each wire type has like a max length associated with it, and that's you know so like HV wires, high voltage wires, will be able to stretch like 20 blocks, whereas LV wires can only stretch like 5 blocks. Like it's and it's patchable. You can patch it however you want. But that is the basics. That is the basis of the whole system. We have machines, we have relays, we have wires, and it's working. The power in this is being distributed to these, right? That's how these got power. And this UI is nice and updated now from the test machine it was, and you can turn stuff off, right? You can turn stuff off. And just if you are out there and you're excited and you're like, oh my god, I have the perfect design for XYZ machine. If you have the perfect design, by all means reach out, because I need those. So when you're doing this, the way that I'm going to implement animations is there's going to be 3 block states. And if you look at the block, you can see it up in the top. Okay. This block is sleeping. If I turn it off, it's still sleeping. Right? It's still sleeping. But if I put an ingredient in, it shouldn't do anything. Right? Now it's showing as off, because now it's capable. It's capable of crafting, but it's off. As soon as I turn it on again, boom, it starts crafting. So now it's on. So off, on, and sleeping. The on, right? The on mode, is the one that needs the animation, because that means it has a valid recipe and it's on, right? Valid recipe and it's on, and it has an ingredient. It is essentially crafting. Sleeping means it's on, but it's not crafting. It's not actively crafting. So a sleeping machine is just waiting for input. It's just wanting input. And the reason I'm doing this, okay, let me first finish the 3D model. So you have 3 different block states: on, off, and sleeping. Sleeping and off can be the same because it's not animated, right? Or you can have it different. It's just the block states, the shape of a block state is different. So as soon as it's on, I'm going to swap the blocks with the on shape, which can have an animation, and the animation will just play, right? It'll just cycle and play. And then as soon as it's done, the animation stops and it resets itself. That's kind of how I'm going to do animations, at least at first, until I'm just horrible with animations. So off and sleeping can be just the static machine's not doing anything, and then the on can have some animation. Think of the assemblers in Factorio, if you've ever played that. While the assembler is running, there's an animation that plays. It has no bearing on what it's crafting. It's just plays an animation. I think that is the simplest way, the simplest solution to have like stuff come alive. But the game automatically supports swapping the block really fast. Like you just swap it, and the client doesn't ever see anything. It's just the block suddenly starts animating. You don't actually notice that the block is swapped back and forth with the state. So anybody out there wanting to try that can submit blocks with 2 or 3 different shape files, right? 2 or 3 different shapes. On, off, sleeping, or just like static and or whatever. Like however you want to split those 3 states up. Off and sleeping can basically be the same. But the reason I have them sleeping is a sleeping block ticks slower than a crafting block, right? A crafting block is ticking 10 times a second. A sleeping block is ticking every 2 seconds, right? So it's technically still ticking. It's just not running any of the update code, but every 2 seconds, which is why if you put, like, let's say this generator is sleeping, right? And you put coal in there, it can take a heartbeat for it to actually hit. What I'm implementing now is as soon as a slot changes, let's see this is sleeping. It's still sleeping because I have some this code has been updated. There's recipe checks anytime a slot, if this slot or this slot change, there is a check. And if there's no valid recipe, it just stays asleep. If you have something in the slot and there's an invalid recipe, right? There's no valid recipe for this combination. It's still sleeping. It's not crafting, right? Sleeping just means it is on and not crafting. As soon as it's crafting, sleeping goes away and it's just on. So that is how that works. I'm pondering whether to do it with electrical networks as well. If there's no activity on the network, see this network here is actually ticking. The electrical network ticks 4 times a second. And I don't have any code in there right now that detects whether or not this is actually doing anything. I could have a check in there. If there's no power moving in a tick, add that tick to an update bouncer. And if that update bouncer hits a certain amount, like, then tick slower. I'm trying to do everything I can to make performance a top priority with this, which is why this sleeping system works. Because you can have 1,000 of these machines in a world. If they're all sleeping, they're all ticking once every 2 seconds, which is a far cry from 10 times a second. So it is a 500% performance boost improvement when a block is sleeping, which is why I implemented that. So yeah, this system is working great. If we look at the mold, right, I've got right now a mold in here for plates and gears. If you have ideas for other things, we have other machines. So obviously this is not going to be the only machine, but adding durability, this is not necessarily a proofing concept, but this is definitely a final look that I'm going for here. And getting this UI was a couple of days of work trying to tweak this and make this work. And I completely redid the progress bar. That is an overhaul, complete overhaul to what it was. Everything else is good to go. All the text in here, sort of the help text. So all the text is localizable. You can, if you are multilingual, you could do a localization and send me the localization. Once it's done, do a localization. I can integrate that so people can have localized strings. I am not multilingual, so I will not be doing that. Nor will I use Google Translate, because that would be just a cluster. That would be horrible. But anyway, yeah, this is the update for the game, for the mod so far. We're hitting the ground running now. We've got a lot of the work done, a huge volume of work that was done, and now it's time to start adding machines. And I am going to need 3D models, cool 3D models of machines going forward. If that is something you are willing to spend some time on, then I am more than happy for the help. But yeah, the thing works great. Everything is fine, and you can even connect this, and now it should be getting power. Great, huh? All right, that is done for the update. I thank you all for all your support, likes, subscribes, channel members, and Patreons get early access to updated versions of the mod. Just to let you know, I have to keep the circles short and tight for beta testing or early access, because I don't want to spend all my time on bug reports that I already know about or feature requests of stuff that I haven't even gotten to yet. So if you're really wanting to support the mod and really encourage me to continue work on it, please consider becoming a patron or a channel member and supporting me that way, or even a tip, whatever. But anyway, thank you all for stopping by today, and I will see you next time.